our next voyage on T-10, the show with 10-minute takes on the future of education in healthcare. I'm your host, Tim Fitzpatrick. Today we're joined by Osman Khawar, the founder and CEO at Diality, a medical device company on a mission to develop solutions that help improve the care and lives of patients with kidney disease. Osman is a nephrologist by training and has been building Diality since 2018. I've heard Osman's name and Diality frequently in kidney care circles for years, so it was a pleasure to finally meet face-to-face at a recent event near their company headquarters in Irvine. I know the kidney care community is really excited and enthusiastic about the dialysis product that they're bringing to market. In our conversation, we chat about Osman's early career as a nephrologist and the important role mentorship played in his path in understanding of the problem that he's solving. He shares the challenges of building a medical device company from the ground up and the opportunity to give patients and care teams more flexibility. We also talk about the importance of patient-centered care and kidney care as a whole. He says something that really resonated with me. He said that in today's health system, nephrologists are often dialysis-centric, trying to fit dialysis into the patient's life, rather than the other way around. He emphasizes the need to go back to the basics and ensure that nephrologists are educated and confident in teaching patients the ins and outs of modalities, including home dialysis. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Osman Khawar, founder and CEO at Diality. Osman, it's a pleasure to finally have you on T-10. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Tim. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled that I finally got to meet you in person a few weeks ago at the conference, and I'd love to kind of follow up by giving you a chance to share your journey, your mission to building Diality. It's a company that I've heard about for years and years, and so obviously it was great to finally put a name with the face and obviously hear the mission behind it, and obviously how you came to found it. But let's start at the beginning and kind of tell us that early story and obviously what Diality is doing today.
Yeah, I mean, my background is a physician and a nephrologist. I spent, a decade or so being a nephrologist, and in that space, Tim, I think developed this real love of home dialysis. In fact, I remember finishing my fellowship and trying to seek out practices that were already back then doing a lot of home dialysis, and so I ended up finding someone in San Diego who had a real passion for PD at the time. And that was really because in my fellowship, I had really great mentors that did that too. And so I continued that passion throughout my practice and really started to develop a love of home hemodialysis in particular. And I think I was really impressed by the benefits that home dialysis provided for patients. And it was really wonderful to see the impact you could make on patients' lives. At some point, I started to get a little frustrated with the breadth of patients I could offer the service to. And either that was I couldn't just get through to how good the therapy was, my own education, and that's why I think your project at Icon is so close to my heart, or the patients were scared and fearful of self-cannulation or some other issue, or the technology was such that it seemed complicated for the patient and they seemed overwhelmed. And so it was those sort of pieces that came together into me thinking that I could probably improve the technology side and get to a place where we could get technology that was easier to use and didn't have some of the issues that legacy technology has had. Though I think it's been, great to have that technology available. And so that's really how I got into that. I started to move out of the physician space and do consulting work and eventually ended up here at Diality as a CEO for 4.5 years now.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for walking me through it. I love how you describe having the right mentors who helped you see the opportunity and helping you kind of fall in love with home dialysis. I'd love to, this is not something that we've chatted or I've heard from you before around deciding to solve for the technology piece. As someone who has had to learn and was not technical and has tried to started a company in this space, I'd love to hear your take on what that was like. We've met with kidney care providers and leaders and had some of those discussions, but never on the tech side, the actual delivery mechanical side. And I know from what I know about the history of nephrology and kidney care and how engineers build dialysis machines. And I just think that's something that's so fascinating and unique to kidney care. I think it's just a really cool draw. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on what it's like to decide to build the technology solution and do something in a way that it hasn't been done before that solves some of those
Yeah,
challenges.
certainly. If I was going to say there's lots of different ways to solve the problem I described. I certainly chose the most challenging one to do. Yeah, there are easier things to try and solve in this space, but I don't think there are more important things to solve in this space. And um, I think that particularly with no background in engineering, you go in thinking you're going to change the world next week, and obviously, as we both know, building an organization it takes grit, determination, perseverance, and all of those things are important attributes for whoever is starting a company in the United States. And I think um, it's been a fantastic journey for me. A lot of learning. We are tens of people now and started off with this on a napkin, me and thinking about what is wrong with current devices and what could we do. And really that napkin, if I was to recreate it, would say, how about a device that's usable? How about a device that could be in any care setting and do the full spectrum of prescriptions for a patient? And then you just go about executing and figuring out what's next. And I think in this space, what's important is staying true to what you're trying to do, and your design input, choosing the right partners along the way, both on the investor side, on your leadership team, on the team that you build, and then creating important relationships as you go along to help you execute on the plan. I've also been very lucky to be in Southern California and in Irvine, where there is a real hub of med tech, I would say hardware med tech development, and that's been very useful on the recruiting side because there's some excellent other large companies in this space that has really created an atmosphere of med tech that's been useful to tap into.
That's great, and I think it's one of the areas, and probably one of the biggest takeaways I had from the conference where we met is that medtech is one of those industries and arenas where it did not necessarily the whole virtual work from home and COVID, obviously the pandemic made that accessible for a lot of companies. But I think medtech and having
Yeah.
access to talent and the geography that still very much matters. So that's that's an important kind of insight in how you've.
Yeah, it's interesting talking to co-CEOs in spaces that are very easy to go virtual. Um, we at that point COVID started, we were building our first device, and you can't put pumps and sensors together virtually, and so it was a real challenging time for us. But as in everything in life, the challenging pieces are what makes us stronger. And so you know that was a very interesting time. We got through it. We got to where we are today. But learnings along the way and all those challenges, I've always found when you look back, it's the challenges and how you got through them that really you remember, not the easy stuff.
Mhm. Amazing. Well, no more needed necessary time to solve this very challenge than now. So I'd love to hear where is the company today. You mentioned the progress. You mentioned I think any setting, full prescription range. That sounds like a high amount of flexibility. Again, from what I understand about machines. So where is the product progress? I guess at this point,
Yeah, we're in the
second quarter.
Yeah, we're in the final stages of product development. We're looking forward to a submission to the agency and bringing the product to market. It's been a really exciting journey, and now as we get out to market and collaborate with the industry, it's really great to hear that everyone is so supportive of innovation in this space. And I think, as you know, I think the renal space is a place where the last 18, 24 months have been a whirlwind of changes from all stakeholders on the payer side, the patient side, the physician side. And I think it's a really great environment. And I think, having other devices that are coming out as well just brings this sense of innovation in the space that's been lacking in the device side for some time. And it's great to have other partners in other places doing the same thing.
Amazing. I'd love to have your take on, as a nephrologist who's now in the CEO seat, developing new technology that will be new for patients. Obviously, innovative in the sense that it's easier to use. There's high usability, and I think the education side of all of this is what I'm curious about. You described the setting of in center or outpatient dialysis clinics and wanting to unlock home, and what kind of initially drew you to home through some of those mentors you mentioned during your fellowship. Could you speak to kind of where education fits in your mind as a nephrologist who's obviously had that clinical experience, but now building a device company, and just how you think about education on the patient side.
Yeah, from the physician side, I think really, and one of the ethoses of our company is to really let the physician prescribe whatever modality they wish to in any care setting, and really getting out of the way and letting the physician and patient be the decision makers on dialysis and that prescription. And home hemodialysis is a great example of there are so many ways to do home hemodialysis. You could do it a short one daily, you could do it overnight, you could do a combination of both. You can really tailor the prescription to what the patient's needs are. But that doesn't happen often enough. And it's still a place where we are dialysis centric rather than patient centric, in that we are trying to make dialysis central, and the patient has to fit around that schedule rather than the other way around. And so part of getting a device that's very flexible is being able to prescribe whatever the patient wants. So when you get to the education space, it's amazing how much time nephrologists spend in advanced chronic kidney disease educating patients on modalities. And I think when you think back to training, there's not a lot of time spent doing that. A lot of time taking care of crashing patients, but not in a lot of fellowship programs. Time spent 25 minutes of an office visit talking about different modalities and what patients should do. I think it's a real area of opportunity in it, and I think that it is. It's great that we are going to get more resources as we move forward. That there is more and more going on in the education space in nephrology, and recently we had increasing reimbursement to try and increase education for patients, but it really didn't move anything. We now have value-based care that's trying to do that, but again, I think we need more tools here. And so as Diality thinks about education, of course, as a device company, we think about it in two ways. How do we make sure patients are comfortable and care providers are comfortable using our device? But also, as we move up the funnel, how do we make both patients, payers, and physicians understand the flexibility that they have in choice of dialysis modality, choice of dialysis machinery, choice of dialysis prescription, all these sort of pieces. And I think that we need to continue to leverage technology to do that.
This is it's helpful to think about the two areas you described: the patient side in the home, the care partners who are on the front lines receiving treatment, understand the flexibility on that front, but then also the stakeholders upstream. You just mentioned you something stuck out to me earlier. You said it doesn't happen often enough with regard to the flexible dialysis prescriptions. I'm curious, are there any top of mind hurdles on why that doesn't happen? Is it largely technology in your experience? Is it low awareness? I mean, are there any challenges that are front and center when you think about why isn't that happening? And of course, I imagine that the machine helps if it is flexible
Yeah,
itself.
it's multifactorial, but I think if you stay physician centric and about conversation, I think that we need to create and build nephrologists that understand home modalities to a greater extent. And that I think is happening. I think fellowship program directors are thoughtful about that. But during your fellowship and training, you need to understand the different ways and be comfortable and confident in the different ways of prescribing dialysis that's patient centric. And I think that's happening. But if it doesn't, then when you get to your practice side, you need to be exposed to that. For example, on PD, there's many ways to prescribe PD that you could have, daytime fills, you could have overnight, you could have a combination, you could do just daytime. There's lots of different ways to do it the same on home hemodialysis. And I don't think that there's enough experience and comfort, and confidence on the physician side to really do some of that work in the vast majority of cases. And so I think that leads to the education that's provided generally being outsourced, and that outsourced space maybe not being as knowledgeable about the different ways to educate people. When I think about HHD in particular, the current technology is very volume based, and there are physicians I know who are very uncomfortable how to prescribe HHD. They don't really understand the volume based prescription. They don't understand some of the different ways we should prescribe HHD compared to in-center dialysis, and so I think that leads to some discomfort again, and so educating physicians, I think, is part of it. I think also our patients are much smarter than we give them credit for, and I think we need to spend more time giving them the tools they need to help in that shared decision making, and I don't think enough of that happens. And so I think more tools that are patient centric and allow them to be involved in that decision is going to be great.
Amazing. The fellowship piece. So I love hearing the different sides of this, and getting some context around the challenges that I hear. Obviously, your perspective is incredible, just given that you've had the breadth there. Do the fellowship program directors mentioned they're thoughtful about how we're educating physicians and early career physicians? Have you seen? Have you stayed plugged in as as someone who's had great mentors? Do you still have those relationships? What are you seeing? Positive signs of people wanting to have those fellowship directors, and how do you think those programs are kind of developing since you went through them about a decade ago?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's in flux. I happen to go to a place with great home ethos. Um, it's not there everywhere, and I think you have to think back to someone's going to be an internal medicine resident applying for a fellowship. How much are they really aware of the importance of home dialysis, and how much is that a selection criteria for their fellowship, and how are they driving that conversation, as well as the regulatory body space? And I think there's a lot of community drive from places like American Society of Nephrology, Kidney Health Initiatives, that are trying to continue to drive this conversation earlier and earlier in the funnel. Just like we talk about the patient funnel, it's a physician funnel too. We've got to move up there and make sure this is key in part of the training programs. And I think there are things like PD University and other things that we do to try and make up for that. But I think the more we can drive this to the fellowship training space, the better on the physician side. And on the patient side, we in all aspects of medicine need to continue to give patients the tools they need to help in this decision making space. And starting dialysis for a patient is a really big decision, and patients go several ways, but one of them is to close their eyes and pretend this isn't happening. And so, how do we attack that problem and fix that? And for those that are going to be involved in the shared decision making, do they have enough tools? Is it widely available? Do you have to be at a premium practice to get great education, or could you be in a rural part of a state to still get the same quality of education? So I think there's lots of ways that we should think about this.
Amazing. Well, this is a great tee up. I want to go through the final frontier with you, Osman. If you're ready, 5 questions in 50 seconds. We'll handle them one by one and knock them out. All right. So first one, what do you see as the top challenge in your particular space?
Time, I think. There's just so much to do, and time just goes so quickly. And I think just as an individual, as an organization, as an industry, we're trying to fix all these problems and trying to fix them as quickly as possible. So really, I think concentrating on the most important things and making sure we're executing on those in all those spaces, I think is really important.
Incredible. How about top opportunity for you for Diality?
Um, I think both for the industry and for Diality, I think continuing to leverage data to improve outcomes. And for example, in your space, in the education space, how do we really measure how we're doing? How do we, improve based upon that data? I think, widening the user base for non-traditional dialysis and using data to optimize outcomes is the two big opportunities in the renal space moving forward.
Great. And on that note, how about tech trend that you're following right now?
Like everyone else, I think that the changes in artificial intelligence are pretty phenomenal. And when you just see the plethora of ways, as a company that raises money, we spend probably too much time creating decks. And I was on a website of a company that creates decks using AI, and it's phenomenal. I think it's really exciting how this is going to change. What are important criteria for leaders in the future, and I think it's going to be different than it was in the past.
I can't wait to save time on decks either. How about top media recommendation, books, podcasts? What are you consuming these days?
There's a book I'm reading now called I may get this name wrong. I forgot to write it down before, but I think it's Slow and Fast Thinking. I forget the author
Thinking
now.
Fast and
It's a really
Slow.
interesting
This
book,
is
though.
Dan Kahneman book.
That's
Oh,
right.
excellent. Yeah.
That's
High
right.
five.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a meaty book, but really interesting. And when I think about it, in the physician space, people talk, and he mentions this. A physician walks into a room and can, in a few seconds, figure out what's going on with the patient. It's just that inherent, innate ability for practice that I think is that sort of fast thinking. And I think there's times to use that, there's times to use slow thinking, and I think that's a really interesting way of looking at decision making processes.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that book. Last one, healthcare or tech leaders that you're following.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many mentors along the way. I don't think one steps out. I think, they all know who they are. I appreciate all the effort they make. But really, to everyone that's out there being an entrepreneur in healthcare, I think there's so much going on, as we saw at the recent meeting. So hats off to all of them, because I think we're all driving hard to improve outcomes for patients.
Amazing. Well, Osman, it's been a true pleasure having you on. I'm rooting for you, excited for everything Diality and yourself are bringing to the market. Can't wait to see what you do the rest of this year and going forward. And thank you for joining us on T10.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, T10, for the invite, and it was great chatting today.